So my mom, Marlene Nottage, passed away on June 23rd, 2025. On June 30th, we had the funeral at St. Luke's Catholic Church in Lakewood, Ohio. And I did the eulogy. One of two, actually. And I'd like to just recreate that right now as best I can. And here's what I said. You know, Mom always wanted to not have a big funeral. She said, just stick me in a garbage bag and throw me on the tree lawn and make me another Bloody Mary. I don't want to hear about it. Well, she didn't really get her wish. So I have a happy story of my past and a somewhat sad story to follow. So I grew up in the 60s, the swinging 60s. The days of the Mercury astronauts and JFK. And my mom worked at the Natural History Museum at that time called the Natural Science Museum. She was there for 7 years. And I was a really crappy student in Catholic grade school. And she decided to send me to a summer school program, but it wasn't a normal summer school. It was they were classes at the Natural History Museum in paleontology and geology. And I would be going on fossil digs and all sorts of exciting adventures over the summer, and kids were jealous that I had a cool mom that would send me to these neat classes. And I had the run of the Natural History Museum as a kid. I spent all kinds of time down there. Then she sent me to the art museum for art classes because I had an aptitude for arts and sciences. And she drove a Plymouth Satellite. You know, how cool is that to have a mom who drove a cool car back then on top of everything else? Now, she had met a guy named Howard Novak back earlier when she had worked at the Cancer Society, American Cancer Society, downtown Cleveland. And they started dating, and they dated for many years, and they had many exciting social adventures. They were painting the town red every weekend. And they would go to movies like Goldfinger and Taurus Bulba and Dr. Zhivago and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And they always said, you know, you're too young, we can't bring you along. But if you want to take our picture before we go out, you can take our picture and practice your photography. Now, Howard was a rock star. I mean, talk about astronaut status to me. He was a war veteran. He was the father figure that I didn't have because my father left. Actually, they broke up when I was about a year old. And he had a boat. He had a 36-foot 1948 cabin cruiser called the Simus that he co-captained with his brother Frank down at Edgewater Yacht Club. And we'd spend hours out on the lake fishing and then going swimming and going to the islands, and the whole family and friends would have parties. And Lake Erie was a large part of my early childhood life. So this was not really a broken home to me. And my grandparents made sure of that also. And they were loved by everyone. My mom and Howard were a couple for the ages. Everybody loved them. My mom had a great sense of humor. And Howard taught me how to ski. They would take me on ski trips. And I'm still skiing to this day as a pretty much expert skier thanks to them. And they took me to the New York World's Fair in 1965. Now, the coolness factor just gets higher and higher. And I was living the life. It was the most memorable period of my life. And they were always supportive of me. Howard was basically my dad. Tragically, he was taken away from us in the 70s by an assailant's bullet. And that's a very sad story that we'll forego for now. Later on, she met her husband, Ed Harvey, at Price Waterhouse. And she worked there for many, many, many years. Well, it's like I forgot the exact figure, but it's double digits. And she continued her social life, and she was the president of the English-speaking union for a period of time, and she had, everybody loved her. She had a fantastic life of service and caring for others. She always was out there for everybody. She was instrumental in shaping who I am. But who is instrumental in shaping who she was? Well, there's a simple answer to that, and that's these fine people, my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandfather, Alex Mamryk, in Ukrainian it's Momrikova, and Helen Mamryk, formerly Adamson or Adamchin in Slovak, so Slovak and Ukrainian. And my grandfather was a tough as nails railroader with a fantastic sense of humor, and the rock I always fell back on as a kid. He would take me out on in the caboose. He was a conductor on a freight line out of North Randall, and he would hide me in the caboose and tell me, keep your head down so the rail boss doesn't, or the yard boss doesn't see you, or I'll get in trouble. It was like living in a movie. And my grandmother was a housekeeper, the head housekeeper for a family out in Shaker Heights, the McBrides. And she would take me at age 5, before I even entered kindergarten, she would take me out to the mansion, and I pretend I'm a rich kid, running around this mansion like one of the little rascals. It was just a rich and layered childhood. In fact, I took this picture on the rim of the Grand Canyon, I think at age 5 or 6, on a road trip out west, which I still remember many aspects of. So they shaped her, and they lived during the Depression and raised my mom during the Depression. So my mom got her great sense of humor and strength and work ethic from my grandfather, and her kindness, compassion, and incredible talent for cooking from my grandmother. So you can easily see where all her great traits came from. Now the sad part, but it's not totally sad because it sort of gets happier. Saturday, June 21st, 2025, I'm kayaking out with Renee and our friend Charlie, who's a legendary kayaker on Lake Erie. We were 2 miles out on Lake Erie, and we get a call from Ed that my mom had an episode. She wasn't feeling well on the way back from a trip they took to West Virginia, family trip, and they were on their way back. And they arrived back, and then she started to have cold sweats, and she needed to get medical care. So he immediately summoned EMS, a rescue squad, and they rushed her to Fairview Hospital. And that's where she was. And I got this call. I'm 2 miles out. We paddled like nobody's business all the way back to the dock at Emerald Necklace Marina. As soon as I got to the dock, I got a call from Ed, and he told me that the doctor wanted to speak to me. And I got on the phone with the doctor, and the doctor said, she's not breathing well. We have to put her on breathing support. And I said, well, I assume she's going to put her in a coma and put an intubator, put a breathing tube down her throat. And they said yes. And I said, but can you give me half an hour? I want to be able to speak to her. And they said, it's urgent. In the back of my mind, I thought I would never be speaking to her again. So they had to do that. And then we got ourselves together. We shot out to Fairview Hospital. And the doctors described the problem. The doctor told us that she likely had a heart attack 2 days before, approximately 2 days before, and didn't know it. Signs for women are different. And what had happened was she developed a perforation between her ventricles, and that perforation started to enlarge as her heart worked. And that perforation had dead skin around the edge, and that was becoming a huge problem. So they inserted an impeller device through her femoral artery into her heart to keep the blood flow at an efficient level. So she was on life support. We're sitting there in this freezing cold waiting room, and Ed has a blanket on, and we had to get blankets from the nursing staff because it was so freezing cold in this way. It was literally, we were shivering. Renee and I are in our kayak shorts and shirt because it was like a 85, 90 degree day. And all of a sudden, I hear a voice as clear as I'm speaking to you now. Now, I don't always hear voices in my head, but when I do, they come from God. And this voice said to me, it's going to be okay. And for a split second, I thought, What do you mean? Isn't she going to be? And then I stopped questioning it. And a veil or a blanket of serenity and calmness and control came over me. And I became instantly unupset and unagitated. And I just repeated it to them. I said, it's going to be okay. I don't think they heard me or registered, but it registered with me because this was not a voice that I was creating in my head. This was out of nowhere, and I had no reason to suspect this because I was just painted with these dire circumstances. So that night, she was life flighted to the Cleveland Clinic main campus downtown. We went home, and somehow I got to sleep. June 22nd, she looked a little bit better. She was unconscious. She was not conscious, but she was looking better. She was looking pinker. We were downtown. They had her hooked up to a NASA-like array of life support equipment. And I spoke to another surgeon. I spoke to the head surgeon, actually, the head of the department, cardiac department. He said, it doesn't look good. We cannot operate at this time because of the condition of her heart. It was not operable. And they would have to wait a period of time to operate. They would have to wait for that scarring to develop between the ventricles in her heart. Right here, that wall, that septum, needed to scar up so they could run a patch up and stick the patch in. In the meantime, they're going to try to keep her alive. There are problems with that. So we agreed to try to let her heal. And I fought with every one of these doctors and every one of these people about, this is the greatest hospital in the world. You know, world-class cardiac unit. There's something you could do. And they agreed, yes, they could fix this, but only under the conditions that her body could start to heal because her body was in shock. So we got home. We couldn't do anything else. We got home, and we have a bird bath on the back deck. And we had all kinds of birds splashing around. And I walked to the back door, and I looked out, and it was like a frozen scene. There were 3 doves just sitting there, not moving, like posing for this picture. I took the picture, and I said, Renee, look at this. And then another thing came over me. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Helen, Marlene, and Al, Renee, myself, and Ed. My peace is yours. My peace I give you. Let us offer each other the sign of peace. My mouth was hanging open for a period of time. The next day, the chaplain came by to visit my mom and gave her the anointing of the sick. And it was a more hopeful outlook because we talked to another surgeon who said, yeah, we could probably get her to 14 days. So we're going to wait and see. And I showed the chaplain this picture on my phone, and he said, you had a visitation. And I said, I guess I did. Yet another sign. And these words kept echoing, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And I kept hanging on that, and I kept reminding Ed, it's going to be okay. Under what conditions, it wasn't clear, but those words were clear. So the 23rd was Renee's birthday, June 23rd, and it was more hopeful, and they did a comprehensive ultrasound of her heart to show the surgical team, and they said it's going to be a 14-day wait. So we went home, had dinner, and around 10 p.m., after we started to settle in and relax, Ed called and said, she's taking a turn for the worse. I'm going down there. I said, we're right behind you. And we dropped everything, got in the car, and it seemed that her blood was becoming very acidic, and it had the potential to rapidly cause organ failure. And they, in no uncertain terms, told us that that night she could very well have a fatal heart attack, or she could have a heart attack at any moment because her kidneys were shutting down. And after all, even if she had the surgery after 14 days, they warned us that she could have sustained brain damage during the period of time. She could have sustained kidney damage, liver damage, because of this increasing blood acid level. I said, well, what about dialysis? I said, why don't you put her on a machine? And they immediately got a hold of the nephrologist. And the nephrologist down there said, even if we do that, it's not going to correct the problem because her heart cannot keep up. Even with the assist, it cannot keep up. And it can't circulate the blood properly. And the blood was becoming, and there were technical reasons, and I understood the technical reasons at the time. I said, I absolutely understand. So they gave us the option of the best option for her, which is putting her on comfort care, which entailed taking down all the support except for the breathing apparatus, and then keeping her comfortable. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I still hung on to that. It's going to be okay. So they removed the support, and the monitor was right here, her heart monitor, her parameters. And I started to just watch her natural heartbeat get weaker and weaker and weaker. And I held her hand, and I whispered in her ear, it's going to be okay. And then within 10 minutes, she passed on peacefully into the Lord's hands. And at that point, I knew she was okay. So as far as we go, we will be okay, as long as we carry her memory in our hearts. So then at the end of that part of the eulogy, I gave people an assignment. I told everyone, you have homework. Take this picture. Take this picture of my mom, this prayer card. I want everyone to have one, and put it on your fridge or wherever at home that is out of the way and prominent. And when you notice it, I want you to remember her kindness, her compassion, her caring spirit, her great cooking, and make it all part of yourself. And as long as you do that, with joy, let not your heart be troubled. She'll always be with us. So thanks for listening. Say a prayer for Marlene. And I'll see you all later.